Hello, everybody out there, and hello, Thomas.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Kirsten?
Yeah, I'm quite excited as always when I go online, and especially tonight, because I really appreciate what you do, and I hope we have a great talk together.
I'm sure we will. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for getting up early in order to talk to me on a Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday.
For anybody who watches, Thomas is from Texas. You're living in Texas, and you have a great website called the Hermit's Mirror. And I was wondering, why did you choose Hermit's Mirror?
Yeah, that's it's a sort of a convoluted story. So,
Okay.
right, the Hermit is number 9 in the tarot, and the moon is its sort of upgrade, right, at 18, which is also 9. My life path number and my destiny number are both 9. So I wanted to have an association with 9, the Hermit, and the moon. I liked the idea of the moon as the mirror of the sun. And so I came up with Hermit's Mirror, and sort of the tagline of, guidance and reflection. So the Hermit and the mirror through divination. That's sort of my approach to helping people learn to read tarot for themselves or get readings from me that help empower them to make their own decisions and be able to move forward with their own skills. So it came from the number 9, essentially. But then, as it turns out, I've been working with the wrong natal chart for many years. It was only until the Pisces full moon or new moon, Pisces new moon, a couple months ago, that I got the correct time for my birth date. And it turns out I'm a Virgo moon. So it was sort of written in the stars before I knew.
Okay, so it was the wrong, was AM instead of PM or something like that, or?
Yeah, I thought I read the birth certificate incorrectly, and I thought that they were sort of underlining AM, and it turned out that they were striking through AM, and they meant to indicate PM, and so that changed me from a Leo moon to a Virgo moon. So.
Well, that's a mirror as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. I like that.
Yeah.
So, but still the name, still the 9 is left in your as the Hermit.
Mhm.
The 18 and the 9. So would you say the 18 is a mirror of the 9?
Oh, could be. I had just, yeah, I mean, it's another form of the 9, and it's some people, I think it's actually Mary Greer sort of helped describe the, your birth number or your major, whatever it is. I'm not sure what it's called here. Your major arcana.
Lebenskarte, we say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, for me, my birth date boils down to like 27 or something like that. So then it becomes a 9. And then the shadow of that, or the side that's underexplored, is the 18 because it also reduces to 9. And so for me, it is a mirror. It's also a shadow, which ties in with the moon as well, and the Hermit.
No, I was just thinking because I always keep thinking when I look at the weight 9 and 18 that the Hermit has this lantern, and the moon, it's a dark moon, is totally in shadows. So I always feel like the Hermit has this lantern in order to walk through the moon landscape.
Yeah,
That's what I was
exactly.
thinking about when you were mentioning this. Yeah, interesting how we come up with our names for our websites.
Yeah, and
I like that.
it was because I was starting on Instagram, so I needed some sort of brand identifier or persona, and I just decided on that. It worked, and then I was sort of stuck with it because after a while, you don't want to change everything that if you bought a domain name and all that business stuff. You just don't change it. So it worked out that I became a Virgo moon.
It's Virgo moons are very creative, and you are very creative, and this explains why it's also orderly and organized on your webpage.
Yeah.
So I really have to tell anybody who's watching, please go and look at the website Hermit's Mirror, because it's full of great ideas and great readings and deep thoughts, I think. And how long have you been studying the tarot?
Yeah, so I got my first deck, or I picked up my first deck off of my sister's bookshelf 25 years ago, or more or less, almost 25 years ago. So I was a teenager then, and she had moved out, and I just picked it up. It was either in French or Italian, I can't remember, and it was a rider deck, and I just started playing with the cards. I'd seen them before. My mom had a friend who did readings for her every now and again. My sister sort of played with it, but never really connected. And yeah, I just started reading. I got very into Wicca and witchcraft. And so in one of the books, I can't remember which one at this point, maybe multiple of them, they gave some initial definitions for the cards. And so I used those. I, wrote down my favorites and had my own little white book that I kept in my first little baby grimoire, and I was really bad at reading tarot. I thought like I could only use these 3 words per card or whatever it is, and so I never connected intuitively with it until much more recently. Like I would say 5 years ago, I decided to look at tarot again in a new light. And what's funny is I would get sort of these psychic insights or whatever, intuitive insights, and I wouldn't really believe them because they didn't match exactly what the cards were supposed to mean based on my, little white book that I'd created. And it was only later looking back that I would see like, oh, this turned out the way that I thought it would turn out, but not the way that I interpreted it based on this very limited understanding. So it was only after I started, really studying each of the cards, writing everything down, creating my own definitions, trying to create little stories out of the cards, not, primarily in the Rider-Waite deck, but then also in other decks as well, as I got to understand them. And then more recently, I've sort of re-engaged with the scrying side of divination. So as a kid, I used to scry a lot without realizing that's what I was doing. I'm always very interested in art, especially abstract art. And yeah, so I realized, oh, you can do that with the tarot cards even when they're not abstract. So I've really enjoyed sort of tapping into the full expression of intuition through the cards and helping other people learn to do that as well through my courses.
That's really interesting. And you just mentioned abstract art. That's a good way of for me to talk about the tarot I bought.
Yeah.
Because I read your newsletter, which is also excellent. I really love your newsletter. It's I appreciate people so much who are able to write long newsletters. I can't.
I'll have to make sure that tomorrow's is good.
Yeah, you have you write it once a month, right? It's coming out at the beginning of the month always. So it's always with a reading in it or some reflection, which is useful. And I think 2 months ago there was the announcement of this tarot here, the Lifeline Tarot. And I just thought, that looks quite nice. I need a new training deck. And I got it. I thought, well, I can write stuff on it. It's just black and white.
Yeah, yeah, you can color it in. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, it's so lovely. I can't write anything on it. Just get me here some, just some very, if we talk about abstraction, well, this is not too abstract, but just the narrowing down of images we know from the Weight Tarot is so brilliant. That's not the best example, actually. I need to find something which is more. I just pull it.
The minor arcana are more open, right? There's more negative space in them because they're more like
through justice, actually, and. You can always recognize the card, obviously, but what I really like about it is that it gives new shades of something. And in this card, you can't see it so much, but I have the impression that you really start out because it's a lifeline and just draw without letting go of the line. Is this right?
Yeah, so that's what you would normally do. In this case, I was doing digital art. And the problem with digital art is if you make a stray mark, in order, if you undo the mark, the entire line goes away. So if I ever made a mistake, I couldn't undo it. And if I were, doing pure art, that would be fine. But because I was trying to make something, a product, I would occasionally take the pen off and then put it back down. In order to sort of save that end point. And then I would continue on as if it were one line. And sometimes I had to double back, but I always made sure that the line could progress forward. And if it couldn't, then I just started over.
And how did you come up with this idea?
So single line art is something that I don't know if in Germany this is common, but kids do it all the time in art school or in art class. So it's a way to sort of tap into the irrational side of your brain. So you would use your opposite hand and you would be looking at something and you would just sort of scribble very quickly without it probably being very good. So I really like the freedom of that, and I got really into it. I wouldn't use my non-dominant hand. I would use my right hand. And I really enjoyed doing that as a kid. And then I just sort of put it aside. But there were a lot of people online who were starting to do these exercises of just, quick single line art. So I decided, I want to do that again. It's been many, many years since I've done that. Why not do that and do the tarot images at the same time so that I can get some copyright-free tarot images to use in my own material. So it's a very selfish thing at first. It was not meant to be a deck. And it was just meant to be, like a couple of minutes for each drawing, maybe a minute if I could do it in under a minute, and then just move on, right? It wasn't supposed to be perfect. It was just fast, quick. And what I really liked about it is that it was very tapped into the irrational side of the brain, right? It's not a perfect match by any means. So you get some of that intuitive aspect of tarot coming through just through the art process, but then it creates all of these stray lines or accidental symbols and all of this negative space. that you can then scry into. So when I realized what I was doing, I decided, and people asked about it, I decided to actually turn it into a complete deck.
Yeah, well done, I have to say. And what I really also like about it is that you can turn it the other way around, especially with the minors. And then it is a totally new image for the card, but you still have the 7 upright. And I think it's a great idea, and it's leaves a lot of space for new interpretation. That's what I really like about it. And I don't know whether you have this in the States, but we have here, or we used to have before movies, there sometimes was a man walking on a line, and he was the line, and then he disappeared into the line and came back into the line. Do you know this? It's
I think I've seen, it must
Italian.
be one of,
I don't know.
A production company, yeah.
I used this when I saw this already when I was a kid. It's quite funny, and he's always complaining about something and then knocked down or whatever. And this reminded me very much of this deck.
Oh, that's fun.
The Gray LeFou says here, I saw the deck on Instagram. Yes, you have a huge Instagram account. Anybody who wants to follow Thomas, please use Instagram. And it's on my wish list. Yeah, you should really get it, Gray. It's really lovely. Plus, shortly after, you came out with another deck, and I don't have it. You have to show us.
Yeah, so it is the Lifeline Lenoracle. So it's a Lenormand, but it's 54. Or
that's the back of the tarot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For there we go. Yeah. Comparison. And so it has sort of similar idea of single line. Oh, the book's upside down. Oh, it's not right.
Yeah, it's
there we go. I'll figure it out. Yeah. Right. So in Lenormand, the book is one of the symbols, and it has a playing card reference, which is the 10 of diamonds. I really like playing cards. As you can see on the Lifeline Tarot, there are numbers and suits sort of in the corner, right, of the playing card or of the tarot cards. And so I wanted to emphasize that with a Lenormand deck and really sort of put the playing cards front and center. So that meant creating just playing cards with the symbols and then adding new symbols and new Lenormand-like meanings for them, as well as creating a book of oracle messages and guidance. So for all of the cards. And I say it's 54 plus cards because there actually are 6 significators. So there are 58 cards in the deck plus sort of 2 extra copyright cards. That, there will be the aces, the ace of spades and the ace of hearts. We'll have different sort of gender fluid figures. So if you don't identify as male or female, or your partner is not male or female, or sort of the opposite sex, and you don't want to use something like the snake or the whip or the rider for your significant other, then you have a couple of options for it. So the images are based on another Victorian artist. I mean, Pamela Coleman Smith was not really Victorian when she created the art. I think it's Edwardian, but this deck is based on children's illustrations from the 1880s. And it is also single line art. So I'm trying to find a good example. So some of them look more like single line art. Like
that's the mountain?
Yep. The 8 of clubs. And then others, it was a sort of a composite image where all of the face cards are reversed. And so you have one figure who I drew, and then I just mirrored the image and sort of edited it so that it would come together. And then sometimes they had like an extra symbol, like in this case, the clouds I drew separately and just slapped them on. So it's single line-ish, close but not perfect.
It's lovely. As I said, I don't read the Lenormand so much, so it's I find it difficult. But for example, Gray here says again that just 2 hours ago I bought a deck of playing cards and draw my own Lenormand on them.
Yeah.
So it's a trend, isn't it, to mix up all these different decks and make a fusion out of them. It's quite interesting what's going on in the scene right now.
Yeah.
Do you do playing cards? Can you read them?
Not well. So now, I haven't taken the time to really study them. And I am someone, we can go back to the Virgo moon, who really likes to study and understand a system. And I didn't fully understand the playing card system that I was using. So I can read them by turning into minor arcana from the tarot, which is not really how you're supposed to read them. And I can read them by turning them into Lenormand cards or into, like I was saying, my sort of my own oracle sort of add-ons.
Yeah.
Like I have all of those memorized now, so I can do that, but I don't fully read the
it's kind of your own system,
as most people do. Yeah. And I will say, I have learned from people who do that kind of reading and who read the Tarot de Marseille in a similar way, where they'll look at the patterns made by the pips, and that provides some sort of meaning to them. But for people who are used to those, mine don't quite match up. So like the 6 is supposed to be very even, and they're supposed to all be parallel, straight lines, horizontal lines across. And I didn't like how that looked. So I just sort of broke all the rules with it, and hopefully people have fun with it.
That's totally okay. So you write on your website or also in the book about Tarot Tableau, which you can also get. It's a quite thick PDF book, Kindle, whatever book.
Yep.
You write that you came up with the idea for tarot tableaus because you studied Lenormand, right?
Yes. Yeah. And as we were talking about before we got started, I mean, I'm not the first person to think of that. And I knew when I was writing it, I'm sure someone has thought of this. If they haven't, I mean, how is that possible that there's hundreds of years of overlap at this point? Surely someone has come up with this. And as we talked about, someone had come up with it. But what I was offering with the book is a very structured approach. So instead of the sort of abstract mix and match, which we can talk about, the Lenormand house system or the Tarot Tableau house system, I wanted to give a lot of very, structured Virgo moon guidance on, this is what you can do first, then look for this, then look for that, and then add in these other things if you're still curious. Because it's hard to read a tableau. There's a lot going on. So a lot of structure and guidance can help.
Yeah, so I'm sure people are aware of the tableau, Grand Tableau, Großes Blatt, as we say in German, from the Lenormand deck. And usually you have 36 cards. As you know, in tarot, we have 78 cards. I told you when I was starting out with tarot, experimenting, I tried to make huge 78 layouts, 78 cards layouts, but this was not really useful. And so usually it's more about the essence of a reading. I think you also write in your book that usually tarot is more about less cards than more cards. I think you say something like that. What do you think a tableau is good for?
It's interesting, and there's a question about, is it available as a real book or just an ebook? And
yeah, please.
I currently have a few copies of the sort of coil bound printed version. It's very expensive to ship overseas because it weighs almost half a pound when it's packed. So it goes into it's expensive to ship over anything overseas.
It is, unfortunately.
But it's even more than shipping the tarot deck because it weighs slightly more. So for those who are international, if you want a printed copy of it, you need to email me so that I can have the printer send it to you directly so that it doesn't pay multiple rounds of shipping. But it is, it's handy to have a sort of a reference. There are these little worksheets and reference tables at the back, and it fits in a large purse or a little backpack or something. So back to your question. That was for the comment. As far as what's it good for, I actually tend to use it most for either spiritual sort of readings, people who are on a journey, the idea comes from the Fool's Journey because you're using all of the major arcana, all 22 of those cards, and they are sequenced from the House of the Fool to the House of the World. Are you going to pull up the spread?
Yeah, I'm just going to show people what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not totally scenes, but you can imagine, I think.
Yeah. Is that the Kindle version?
I made a photo. I just made a screenshot from my Kindle version.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's available as Kindle or for Apple Books or PDF.
Yeah, exactly. So I just thought we can show the layout, which is the basic layout for it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, this is the standard layout. When I'm working on sort of spiritual journey, I may use one of the alternatives. Mm-hmm. That's the one that comes up most often. But a lot of times when people want to set up a live reading and they say, I don't really know what I want to look at, I just want a reading, this is a really good option for me, at least. And then if people want lots of different things and we only have 30 minutes, you can actually also use this because every area of your life is covered in a tableau. So you don't have to do multiple spreads. You can just do this one and then focus in on like, okay, what's the message for this area of your life, and dial into that specific position. So just to give some overview of the system for those who don't know, you would lay out your 22 major arcana, and whatever card comes out first is considered to be in the House of the Fool. So that's why it's position 0. The next card is in the House of the Magician, position 1. House of the High Priestess.
You shuffle all the 78 cards for this, though, right?
You can, I don't personally. I only use the major arcana, but you can add in all 78 if you want. That is. I consider that like a modification, but I explain, in one of the appendixes of the book, different ways. There are multiple. You can sort of do it however works for you. Mm-hmm. I encourage trying just with the 22 major arcana because that helps, keep it in perspective because it is a lot of cards. So just having like one big quick shot of, what is that feeling that I get from this card can really help focus and not get like lost in all the details because there are so many cards. But yeah, you can absolutely deal all 78. Or not all deal all 78. You can use all 78 and just deal out the first 22 cards. One of the methods that I got from learning the Lenormand is to see like which card falls into which house. That's the general idea, and then how do they relate? Like if you're only using the major arcana, then sometimes you'll have like the House of the Magician, the Magician falls in the House of the Fool. So card number 1 falls in position 0. And then maybe it just so happens that the Fool, card 0, is in house position 1, the House of the Magician. So they sort of talk to each other that way. And you can form a link. Sometimes there is no pattern and all 22 cards lead back to each other and it's just one long chain. More often than not, though, there are a couple that, the Empress will be in the House of Strength, and then Strength will be in the House of Temperance, and then Temperance will be in the House of the Empress. And so they form like a little sentence with those 3 cards, and you can read them in sequence to get, additional advice or additional insight. And so the reason why it works well for a general reading where you don't know where to focus is because the first step is to find the Fool and where the Fool lands. And wherever it lands, that's meant to be the focus, or it suggests where you are currently focused. And that can be a nice way to sort of open up the reading and get more information from the querent or for the querent, so that they can start thinking about that and say like, oh yeah, actually, I do really need to know more information about that area of my life. Let's dig into that and see what happens.
So each position represents an era of life.
Yep.
An area of life, not an era. So what would be position number 10 be, for example?
Yeah, so it depends on if you're doing more sort of esoteric tarot reading, that's going to position 10 as the house of the Wheel of Fortune. And that's going to suggest potential like karmic factors or things that are happening in the external world that you don't really have a lot of control over. It can also be a way of getting advice on how to make the most of your natural luck, right? Or your natural prosperity. Like if you're prosperity focused, okay, how can I tap into that? And let's say you see the Magician there. Okay, well, you need to do something individually. You need to activate, manifest, whatever it is, right? Like you have a lucky opportunity with your writing, all of the different things that the Magician can represent. Those are sort of your pieces of advice for focusing in on the area that the wheel represents. So it may be luck, it may be sort of karma, and then you could see, well, where's the Wheel of Fortune? Is that going to give me some additional advice? Which house is it in? Do those work together? Are they working against each other? And you get to see all of these beautiful relationships between the cards and the positions that really sort of layer on meaning and meaning and meaning.
So you would jump from the position of the Wheel of Fortune, which could be in 5, then to the Hierophant and see what's he doing?
Yep. Yeah. So let's say we had the Magician in the house of the Wheel of Fortune, right? I was saying, okay, you may have some good fortune through writing. And then you see the Wheel of Fortune is in the house of the Hierophant. Okay, this could be educational writing, or you could have luck sort of in the educational realm. So then you may start thinking like, okay, is there a book that I could be writing, or is there some sort of course that I could be communicating, right? Because the Magician is also a communicator. Or is there, if you're going a more magical route, do I need to tap into some sort of like ancestor magic, right? Because the Magician is magical and the Hierophant can be tied to your ancestors. And then you can sort of follow that path to see where it leads. I like to think of these in terms of keywords. Even though keywords were limiting for my own initial practice, once you're working with 22 cards and each of the positions have very sort of strong meanings, anything more than keywords can get very overwhelming. So then you start to like create a little sentence using those keywords, much like you would for a Lenormand spread. And like the Lenormand, you're not looking at, or I would not recommend looking at every single card. Just there are certain cards that you look for, and then there are certain areas that you look for. And then you just see, okay, what are the natural patterns that are emerging, or what's the area that I need more insight into.
And do you work with directions, like where the Fool is looking at or anything like that?
Not so much. Well, I shouldn't say that. I have. That more becomes like an intuitive message that's coming through. It's not necessary. You could just lay down pieces of paper that have the words, the names of the cards on them, and you could still get the same sort of reading out of it. I think that if you're looking at the visuals, which I would normally do in a less structured reading, you can get really good ideas. So sometimes you'll see, particularly the Fool who's about to take a leap, right? Like what card are they about to fall on at the bottom of that column? That has in the past been actually really useful for querents to know. And so I don't know, what I find so fun about the spread is that it's very precise and it has proved very accurate. And not just for me, but for people who have used it, which I think is coming from the energy of the Lenormand, which is more fortune tellery. And so you can get very direct guidance, very clear, like subject, verb, object sentences out of these patterns.
But there is no card like this is the advice of the reading, is there?
It depends. So you're looking in very abstract terms at first. So you look for the Fool and you look for the World, and you see like, okay, what is this sort of situation about from beginning to end? And then
the world is, sorry to interrupt, but the world that's the final outcome?
Yes. So what's in the house of the World, or the house of the Fool to the house of the World, is sort of the journey, and then where the Fool is, what house that's in.
On this stage of your journey, you are.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like here you are, and then where the World lands is a sign of like what area of your life is sort of undergoing this evolution. So you have sort of the trajectory, the beginning to end, the here you are marker on the map, and then, you know, what's sort of the ideal outcome of this, or what can you help evolve here with the world. So that's sort of step one, is those four things. And then step two, you get to sort of the emotional core and what's driving you with the heart of the tableau. So you're looking at sort of the central cards to see, you know, what's either giving you life or what's helping you transform, depending on which house is central. And then you start doing like cross readings, left to right, top to bottom, or bottom to top, excuse me, for that. And then you move on to the third step, which is about looking for those natural matches. And that's sort of where a lot of the advice can come through, where you can get very specific details because you have, you know, that chain of 3 or 4 or 5 cards or whatever that give you a sentence that says, okay, here's the thing that you need to know about this. And then if you still want to go further, or if you have more questions, then you can start really digging in with some advanced techniques. So if you know, like, I really need to know what's going on with, you know, my marriage or whatever. So then you would look at the house of the lovers or the house of justice, because it represents Libra, depending on your own personal take on what those cards should mean. And then, you know, you would see what energy is positioned there. You might do some things like knighting and mirroring, which are based on where a card falls within the spread. And so I have little sort of quick
Sorry, I need to put this back again.
Yeah.
How can you mirror here? So
yeah,
can you give me an example?
Yeah, so let's go to the example of the house of the lovers. So position number 6.
Yeah.
The cards that mirror that are going to be on sort of the opposite side of a vertical line. So in this case, 10. And then also
that's mirroring. Okay, from 6 to 10. Okay.
And then also, you know, flip it over horizontally. So then you also have 15 and 11. So all 4 of those, or 10, 11, and 15 can all speak to what's going on in 6. And they just give different perspectives.
Okay. Yeah.
And then something like knighting. So let's stay with position 6. The card that's in position 3 is in a knighted position. So if you think of chess, it moves over 2 and up 1. And that can give more, that's like an influence, right? So something that's affecting it that may not be obvious. Like the knight strikes from a surprise position, right? It's not direct. So these are some of the things that may be like indirect influences that you should just keep in mind. I don't recommend that people do every technique for every reading because it's overload. It's just so much information, and it's not necessary because there's a lot of, you know, a lot of the different techniques that you can use sort of overlap how they're working together. So one of the techniques is to read the 4 corners. So what's going on in 1, 5, 16, and 20. And you read diagonally to see like, okay, what are my inner limits? What are my outer limits? And you get a good sense of that. And then, you know, you can read the first 3 cards and the last 4 cards, 0, 1, and 2, and then 18, 19, 20, 21 to see like, okay, what are pieces of advice that I need? But if you start doing everything, then you get lots of information. It starts to feel sort of the same if you keep recycling the same cards, because there are 22 cards. The different patterns overlap in meaning when you start like working with the House of the Fool and the House of the World, right? That's step 1. That's going to overlap with these first 3 cards and these last 4 cards. So you have to be really thoughtful when you're setting your intentions. Like, okay, what do I want to look at? How deep do I want to go with this? And then know when to stop. Like if you keep getting the same messages sort of over and over, then you've gone far enough. You don't need to keep digging, because otherwise you're just going to sort of work it to the bone.
I think you sit there with this for about 3 hours to do one reading.
If you do everything, you could be there for an hour. I have done them in 15 minutes, but I don't go advanced. I'll just pick a couple of areas, you know, we'll see just what jumps out. And it's usually the querent isn't looking for anything in particular. They just want, you know, a general reading. And so you just look at what naturally comes out, and you don't get into the advanced stuff, or you don't worry about, okay, well, they were curious about their marriage, so let's see what's going on in the House of Justice and the House of the Lovers, and let's do all of these analyses with mirroring and knighting. Like, that's going to take you much more than 15 minutes. So instead, you would see, okay, if the Fool is in the House of the Lovers or the House of Justice, then we need to look at that. But otherwise, unless there's something interesting going on there with matching, we're not going to worry about that. They didn't ask about it, and the cards don't think that it's important to focus on.
Okay. You mentioned that you're building sentences as well. And this reminds me of, again, of your Lifeline Tarot, where you have put in this little reading here, which I really like as well, which is a very grammatical.
Yeah.
I never have experienced a grammatic reading.
Oh,
before.
really?
How did you come up with this again? It's so creative. I mean,
yeah, I'm not the first person to have thought of that. So it's also part of some Lenormand readings, where, you know, you have your 3 cards and they form a kind of sentence, where you have the focus and then some modifiers to that focus. And so I really wanted to offer that, where you draw 1 card, that's the answer. If you need more insight, then you draw another card that modifies the first one. And then if you still need more guidance, then you need to see sort of like, okay, what are these first 2? Where are they headed? So then we draw the 3rd card, and that's like a verb. And if you still don't quite understand, then you can draw a 4th card to modify the verb. And then finally, if you're like, I still don't get it, you have 1 more card that hopefully you get it after that point. And that's sort of where everything is headed, the object of the sentence.
Yeah.
But it really is about the first card.
I especially liked your differentiation between adjective and adverb, because people can learn about their grammar again.
Yeah.
What is an adverb?
Exactly.
So this is really great. It's really a good idea to think about this in phrases. I never. Who mentioned this in Lenormand? You said there was somebody already thinking about this.
Oh, I think. I mean, I thought that it was a common technique. So I've heard a couple of different people sort of referencing that. I could be wrong. But some of my friends who read Lenormand do it that way.
Okay. Well, I'm actually not so much with, I don't know much about the Lenormand scene myself. We do other oracle cards. We do the gypsy cards. I don't know whether they're in America as well. It's not Kipper, it's not Lenormand, but there's a 3rd oracle card.
Is it like a Taya system?
A what system?
A Taya, from the, you know, Taya, the tarot author from, I think, the 19th century.
Yeah, well, they are all from the 19th century, the Lenormand and the Kipper. And they are called, in Germany, they are called Zigeuner, but not much longer, because it's a derogative term.
Yeah, like
so, but they're from Austria, and the other 2 are from southern Germany, as far as I know.
Okay.
So you don't have houses there. It's a different system. So I understand the system of houses and everything, but I never thought about making sentences. And it's a great idea for readings to think in sentences, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, you were mentioning the sort of mixing and matching of different card types. And that, you know, I think that's what I really like about, or, you know, where the idea of the sentences comes from. The Lenormand and Kipper, they're very direct and they're very specific, because they sort of work through these keywords. They have these sentence-like structures sometimes, you know, and so it's very specific, very everyday practical. And then the tarot can be a little bit more abstract. You get into intuition, you get into sort of domains of your life. And then the oracle is like very abstract, where you just have like this guidance, right? Like, what energy can I approach this situation with in a very high level? And then the Lenormand is very low level, very specific, and sort of you can get the full range of interpretation with all three.
Yeah, though I find the longer I do tarot readings, I find they are actually quite precise as well. It's just that through psychological tarot and everything, we kind of drifted away from this precision. Yeah. But if you really focus on what's on the card, on the symbolism, and related to your concrete question, it always gives you a very concrete answer, which sometimes scares me nowadays. I have to confess, it's that's quite frightening at times. So
yeah, I mean, I've found that with particularly with tableau readings that they get.
Yeah, I really need to practice. I bought your book, I don't know, I think half a year ago, but I still haven't managed to go through it. But that's why I wanted to talk to you as well.
Oh, yeah.
To get started again with that.
Through Instagram on my IGTV, so the television channel, the sort of video channel on Instagram and on Facebook, I have videos for the basic steps. So if you have the book and you're practicing, I have a sample reading at the end to give you like what I actually read with it around the time that I was writing this. So that the videos are there if you need additional help in really putting it into practice and seeing like, okay, here's how they go. And those first 5, I think, videos for the basic steps are free. They're just on Instagram and Facebook. I may do the advanced ones at some point. I meant to last year, and then I got into a bunch of other projects instead.
Like doing 2 different decks.
Yeah, and my interview series, that's really what started it. I was like, I don't want to keep doing all of this stuff by myself. I would much rather be talking to someone else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been busy.
Yeah, it's mad. You mentioned scrying in the beginning, and are you planning on developing this somehow?
Yeah, so I have taught a course on reading for past life readings and ancestor readings and those sorts of things. And in it, I go over a variety of different divination techniques. And so actually for my introductory tarot course, I also go over some various divination techniques, and scrying is one of the things that I am trying to teach people because it's a lot of fun. It's very intuitive. I think it helps break away some of the binds that we put on ourselves with, we have to know the keywords, or we have to know the astrological correspondences, or we have to pay attention to the very specific images of the card, when, sometimes those are just not applicable, and you need to listen to like your mind's eye and see what your intuition is trying to show you, or letting you see, and it's very freeing. So I'm trying to incorporate that into my different courses that I have, and but otherwise I don't know if there's anything specific for just scrying.
Are your courses online? I mean, do you teach in person, or is it videos?
It's virtual. So the 2 that I mentioned were both live classes that I did. Starting later today, actually, my introductory tarot course, Read Tarot Like a Nerd. I will be launching that on Teachable today. Later today, it will be available. And that's going to just be through Teachable, so it's self-paced. I don't have all of the material recorded and compiled yet, so each week I will release sort of the next section, and there are 5 sections. And that matches the structure that I did for the live course. And then once all of that's done, then I can do more live courses again. But the basics, I don't know, I feel like people can learn and practice the basics on their own. And then once they have that, then they can get into some more advanced topics or specialty like ancestor readings, or what do I do with court cards when I don't understand them? What are my different options? How do I incorporate astrology or magic with tarot? Things like that. And so those are all sort of future courses, but I need to clear out this introductory tarot course material first, and then in June, I'll be able to teach live again.
Okay.
So
this will be all on your website, obviously, as well. And
yep.
if people get your newsletter, they will be informed.
Yep.
You mentioned to me that you are not a full-time tarot expert. How do you manage?
I don't do much else. So we were talking about Benabel because that's how you learned of my
exactly.
work. And, you know, she and I, for my interview series, we talked about that, right? That like productivity comes at a cost. So if you are doing all of this stuff, something else has to give. So typically that has been my home life. Like my poor family puts up with me. And I'm excited to finally sort of like break through this milestone. And then I'll actually take a fair amount of time off. Like this, the whole month of May, I'm not doing readings for people because there's too much going on. I'm moving to a different state. I have to register my business in a different location. Like there's all sorts of, I have to mail out all of these new decks. And I have to finish this course. So it's like, all right, I have to cut something. But yeah, I love the work. So I'm willing to do it late at night and on the weekends. But there is now going to be a reckoning of sort of rebalancing for the next couple of months so that I won't do quite as much. And I'll just sort of let the things that I've created in a very inspiring period. Aries was very busy for me. And then just sort of calm down a little bit on what I'm releasing and then just sort of let people absorb everything because there's a lot going on. And it takes time.
Yeah, no, I'm just totally impressed. And I have the impression that people in the States are really, I thought I was a workaholic, but I'm definitely not.
I joke that I do tarot work full time. I just have a full-time corporate job as well. So, there's just not a lot of I don't really watch TV. I don't hang out with friends very often. So,
well, that's a shame, but we have Corona now, so we can't do anything anyway.
Yeah, no, it's been useful in that way for me.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, people have no more questions. I think we had a good introduction, and I think anything else you should do, you should learn by getting Thomas' book and his cards. I really recommend his cards. I recommend his book as well. And as you all heard that you can have Facebook guidance, on Instagram there's guidance, and just get in touch with Thomas. As you learned, he's a really nice guy. And
I check my email, I check my messages. I try to get back to people quick.
I actually didn't dare to ask you for a live because of your name. I thought, well, the Hermit is not going to be live.
That is the problem with the name.
Exactly. And then I realized you're all over the place.
Yeah. It can be.
Well, if you change your state, you can also change your name. So
I did think about that, but there's a lot of sort of legal holdings tied to
I'm sure in America.
So I think I would just have a second thing. Like lifelinetarot.com is also where you can find information about the deck.
Lifeline Tarot is actually really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that wasn't supposed to be the original name either. I had a name that I felt really excited about. And then I mean, for any sort of major business decision, I'll draw cards. And I always use one deck, the Muse Tarot by Kirsten, who, if you like her, I'm interviewing her on my channel next Wednesday on the 5th. So we'll get to talk about some of that, I'm sure. But I was going through names and it kept saying no, you got to change this name. And so then I tried to come up with a similar name and it was like, that's better, but still no. And I don't remember what it was, if there was an image in one of the cards that made me think of Lifeline, or if I was just looking up phrases involving a line, because I wanted to emphasize the single line aspect. And it was like, bingo, lifeline is the right option. So I felt good about
great.
that.
It's great. It's this line thingy, and also tarot often is a lifeline, isn't it? It's I really like the name.
Yeah,
very well done. Yeah, you have still lots of to do because you're going online with your course tonight, and
yes.
for me it's evening here. I have to start dancing into May.
Wonderful.
Well, it's not really going to happen, but I still imagine myself doing it.
Yeah. Visualization is a powerful
exactly.
tool.
The contact of Thomas is in the show notes, and I'm sure you're able to find him anyway. And I will be here next Friday with somebody from Germany. So no German talk, no English talk, but German next time. But keep busy, come up to show. Oh, I'm losing my English now because I'm already in Germany.
It's okay. You can switch to German. I'll just listen ignorantly. Okay. Thank you, by the way, for this being in English. And for everyone watching.
Otherwise, it would have been difficult, wouldn't it?
It would. I do speak some Dutch, but no German.
Well, I don't speak Dutch. Yeah,
it would not have been a good conversation.
Exactly. It would be very interesting. We would have shown cards to each other in order to communicate.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, we should try this another time.
Yeah.
So once you have come up with a scrying deck, I'm going to have you back here, but perhaps before as well. Thanks very much for taking the time. It was really loads of fun talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
And I'm sure we meet up again at one point.
Wonderful.
So
thank you, everyone.
Great time and a good Friday.
You too.
Speak to you. Bye.
Bye.